You're watching 16 News Now Digital Plus's 16 Sports Extra, brought to you by Gates Automotive.
Welcome back into 16 Sports Extra. We're back.
We're back, baby.
After a couple week hiatus, little technical issues or something.
Technical issues, schedules, bye weeks. There's no bye weeks in high school, but apparently there are for Jackson Neill. So
yeah, little bye weeks. When Notre Dame takes a bye week, that's a nice time for me to get a couple of days off.
He said goodbye to all of us for 5 days. Just vanished off the face of the earth. Planet of the Earth.
Planet of the Earth.
Planet. Yeah. You know what? We haven't talked to the microphone for 3 weeks. My brain isn't firing on all cylinders right now, Jackson.
That's what happens when you come back from vacation. That's how I'm feeling that too. Feeling a little rusty back here. So excuse any mistakes.
You gotta get a high school podcast out of the way before the Notre Dame podcast later this week. So you gotta get the reps.
Of course, yeah. Pot of Gold's coming back later this week.
Walk before you can run.
Yeah, you're just the person I test with, Austin.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that. I appreciate being your test dummy.
No worries. All right, so we are back, and we're coming back after a pretty interesting, I would say, last Friday night.
Yeah.
Not a ton of highlights.
No.
I would say, as a guy in the TV business.
Offense optional in some of these games this week, especially the marquee games. It felt like outside of the Marion New Prairie 42-28 barn burner, it was a lower scoring game amongst the best teams, air quote, in the area.
Yeah, it really was. It really was not a high scoring week, and I think the best place to start would probably be
the lowest scoring one of them all.
Yes, and the game that I know you were at, it was our our game of the week. It was this big thing we were looking forward to.
Elkhart and Penn.
Elkhart at Penn, and it was a close game. Came down to the wire, so I guess it lived up with the drama, but not the point. 7-3.
No, 7-3. So Elkhart beats Penn 7-3. For those who didn't catch it. Yeah, I mean, we knew Elkhart's defense was legit coming into this game. The most they've given up in any game this year is 17, and they played like it on Friday night. This is a really good defensive team. Their offense still gives me some question marks, like if they really want to make a serious run in 6A, because 6A is so hard, like you have to have a good offense. Eventually, they're going to play a team that knows how to play offense against their defense, right? So, like, it's going to be tougher, but man, that defense is nasty, dude. They obviously, we talk about the 3 Division I kids all the time up front with Dye and Orozco and Cordaro McPhee, but Anthony Leonard was a beast at linebacker. Cross Jones is a sophomore. He will probably be a Division I player. Like, he is really good. Only a sophomore. So look out for Cross Jones in the future, son of Antoine Jones, who, if you've been around South Bend area football, Antoine Jones is 800 different coaching stops. He coached every South Bend school. I think he's took Washington to the state finals in 2011. So he's a really good coach. He's an assistant. I think he's a defensive coordinator for Elkhart. So he's doing great. Trevon Curry gets that signature win at Elkhart. They are in the driver's seat for the NIC championship. And I think you have some question marks about Penn now, man. Like I like Pete Reardon. I like Penn. They're good. They're good people out there, but they have really struggled against the 2 best teams on their schedule so far in Mishawaka and Elkhart. I think we were thrown off by that Valparaiso game a lot. I have take that Valparaiso is not that good. Like, they're 4-3. When Valparaiso has played anybody with a pulse, basically, they have lost. They lost to Crown Point. They lost to Maryville by a lot. Valparaiso is maybe, I don't think they're what we think they are. Like, or what the people think they are, because Valparaiso kind of gets the benefit of the doubt because they are a great program. Penn beat them 49-42 week 1, and neither team has really inspired a lot of confidence since neither Penn or Valparaiso. So when Penn's like 2, quote unquote, hit the microphone, sorry, 2 quote unquote real games, air quote, they scored 7 against Mishawaka and 3 against Elkhart. Like, they have to figure it out on that side of the ball if they, want any chance, especially being in a sectional with Crown Point. Like, Crown Point's really, really good. They did that blind draw to work out where they don't have to see them for the final potentially, and so maybe they can get a win, in the semis. But I don't know. Penn's defense is good. They have gotten much better on defense, and again, Elkhart's offense isn't great. They can run the ball kind of well, but they're up. The passing game is not there right now, and they got to become more well-rounded in these next couple weeks. But yeah, I came away like, yes, Elkhart's defense is legit. That was the biggest takeaway from the week, but I just, I don't know. The game wasn't like, it didn't inspire a lot of confidence overall of like, can these teams make real runs? Personally, I mean, maybe I'll be wrong. I'll be happy to be wrong if one of them goes on a run here, but I'm just not, overly inspired by, both of them have question marks on offense, which scare me in terms of can they win a sectional championship or a regional and make a serious noise in Class 6A. It's just so hard in 6A. Like, there's only 32 teams in the class, and generally 20 of them are like the 20 best teams in the state usually. Like they're in that caliber, so it's hard to make a run in 6A. So the offense has to be figured out on either side if they want a chance in 3 weeks.
I think what impressed me though in this game was for Elkhart. It was winning a close game like this.
Yeah,
I think one thing we've seen with Elkhart a lot of times is they've won big against a lot and so far on their schedule. But even in a game against like something like Riley where they pulled away in the second half and it was not a close game, there's still a ton of penalties. They're still making mistakes. They're still shooting themselves in the foot.
And the first 2 drives of this game on Friday, it was like, oh my gosh, same old Elkhart. Like they had I believe so the drive that Penn missed a field goal on. So Penn kicked the field goal early. Elkhart had 2 offsides on the drive that Penn scored the field goal, first drive of the game. The next drive, Penn picked up first downs via a roughing the passer, a pass interference, and a face mask penalty. Like Elkhart was giving them all these first downs and all these tries to score, and then Penn missed a field goal. Like, to 15 minutes into the game, you're like, oh my gosh, Elkhart is, like, come on, like, they're better than this, right? Like, the talent is there. We know the talent is there. Like, stop self-destructing. And then they cleaned it up. I mean, the second half was much better for both teams. It was a much cleaner second half. That first half was a little tough, but at least penalty-wise. But, yeah. With Elkhart, keeps focused and if they can get the offensive figured out, like the defense is there. There's no doubt about that defense. The offense is where you kind of get the question mark started with Elkhart.
Of course. And that win has them now at 5-0 in the NIC, so they are at the top of the conference.
Yep.
Penn is now 4-1. That was their first loss in the conference, so they're in second place. And then in third place, there's kind of a 3-way tie, and that brings us to our next matchup that I had this past Friday night. Marion against New Prairie. New Prairie now 3-2. Marion also 3-2 in conference after that result.
I believe St. Joe is 3-2.
They're also 3-2, but New Prairie beating Marion 42-28, and a game that actually had some offense in it.
Yeah,
in that one.
I mean, it was at halftime. It wasn't looking like Marion was going to be in this, but then they rallied. Man, it was like, I think it was 21-7 New Prairie at the break, and then it was 28-28 at the end of the third. By the way, this is my first time seeing these Marion all-black uniforms.
Oh, really nice.
Yeah, it's an interesting look. I don't know if this is new or not. I've never seen it, though. But, yeah, I mean, look, coming into this year, I think we figured Penn and Elkhart were, like, the top 2, and then you had New Prairie, Marion, St. Joe, maybe Riley in that, like, 2 through 6 or 3 through 6. NIC area, and then Adams and Washington kind of bringing up the end there, but this is good for New Prairie. Like we talked about it the last time we did a podcast. New Prairie had not beaten a team with a win, so they have now beaten 2 teams with wins, Riley and Marion. Obviously, that was going to play itself out. Like if they were going to make a run, they would be a team with a win. But it was just kind of funny. Through 5 weeks, their 3 wins were against teams that were combined 0-15. So it was like, can New Prairie beat someone with an actual win? The biggest thing for them is that offense looks like it's figured it out. Like that was the issue against St. Joe, right? They lost 7-0 to St. Joe, probably because I was there, because I don't see points. I'm allergic to offense this year. If you track all the games I've been covering, it's been bad. But they put up 49 on Riley, they put up 42 on Marion, 2 teams that we think have pretty good defenses. So this is a big week for New Prairie. I know we'll talk about it probably in a little bit, but they play Penn, and it's like we're gonna find out a little bit more, I think, and we're gonna maybe we'll find out more about Penn too. But yeah, Reed Robinson is starting to come into his own. They really have figured out how to use his talents to the best of their abilities. The New Prairie defense and special teams have been really important as well too. They've been scoring, getting turnovers and scoring points off of that side of the ball. And don't be discouraged by Marion either. Like Marion, they're number 7 in the Tribune Power Rankings this week. They're even with the 3-4 record, because their 4 losses are to they're 5-2 Mishawaka team, a 5-2 New Prairie team, a 6-1 Culver Academy team, and a 5-2 Penn team. Like their losses are about as good as losses you could have in this area and still be considered like a solid team, right? 3-4, and they beat St. Joe, and again, maybe their wins other than St. Joe have come against teams they kind of are supposed to beat, air quote. They get another great one with Elkhart this week, so it doesn't get any easier. But they have played well. And I wrote about it too in the rankings. Like they led Mishawaka 17-7.5. Like they were in it with. I mean, they lost by 17 to Penn, but it wasn't like a bad 17. They led Culver Academy late, and they were tied 28 with New Prairie. Like this is a team. Like if the ball bounces a different way or two, like we're talking about them as a real contender in 3A, and their record is 5-2 or even 6-1 potentially. Like the only game that they kind of quote unquote lost really was Penn, where they never were in it to be like from the start to finish. Like there were moments in the Mishawaka, Culver, and New Prairie games where you thought the Knights might win this. So they're a couple bounces away from being 6-1 potentially, and that kind of makes them dangerous because I think people in their sectional might look at them and be like, oh, they're 3 they might probably finish 4-5 because it's a tough one with Elkhart, this week, and that's unless Elkhart has that big hangover type of performance, right? Like Marion, Elkhart will be favored in the game. So it's just interesting. Marion's I think they're a solid team, and when they get into that sectional, it's probably going to be a little easier for them just because you're not playing these big 6A, 4A, even the bigger 3A teams like that they've had to face. So
yeah. And when you talk about, we've talked about this all year with Marion, it's just this many seniors on the team, this much veteran leadership, is that there's the type of team that even if they, maybe you talk about a team that didn't have a couple of bounces, like you said, some of these close losses, they're kind of checking out by the end of the year. Well, a team like this with this many seniors on it, that they know that like they can still put together a run late in the season, and they know that this season is not just over. That they still have plenty to play for because this is their last year. So this is the type of team that you got to be really watching out for when it comes time to the postseason.
Their coaching staff too. I mean, obviously the coaching staff has been there. They've done this. They've made postseason runs. Even their last semi-state team, I think they were 4-5 or 5-4 on the regular season. So, they'll be fine, I think. So it's just like their record is a little misleading just because they've played some really, really good teams and they've lost, but they've been in it. They've been in these games. In the sectional with Knox, like Knox is going to be their biggest foe in Jimtown as well, but. They're gonna be live, as they say.
Yeah, exactly.
Live, so.
And then going over to the rival now, the other 3-2 team in conference, St. Joe, they were able to beat Riley this past weekend, 29-0. That's St. Joe defense.
Yeah, they're pretty good, man.
You'll see it right here on special teams too.
Kobe Addo, he scored a safety and he scored a pick 6 in this game. So, they've been really solid. This is another team where like. They're in a sectional with, I'm only talking a lot about the sectionals because we're getting to that time.
Yeah, we are.
And the sectional draw comes out Sunday night for those who are paying attention or didn't know. So that's kind of fresh on my mind right now as we're starting to think about, okay, like we're late in the season. Most of the conference races have pretty much been decided. Like Elkhart is in the driver's seat of the NIC, Concord in the NLC, but we'll talk some more NLC football here in a minute. So, like, the new INSC has been won by Knox, unless Knox somehow just completely loses, like, everything, like, this week because they beat Jimtown. So, like, the conference races are kind of over. We're kind of figuring out who's going to be this postseason, run now. And so, St. Joe's in that sectional with, really, really good 4A sectional. We talked about it at the beginning of the year, just how loaded this thing could be. So yeah, they're playing good. If their defense plays how like they played against Riley and New Prairie, they're going to be in at every game. But they've had some moments kind of on defense where it's again Elkhart's a good big 6A team, so it's hard to keep up with them. But that's a game. St. Joe and Elkhart, it was tied at 17, and then Elkhart rattles off 3 touchdowns in the second half unanswered. So like St. Joe and Marion, I was just like that's where I'm at. Like I'm like like I don't know, like they're kind of doing what we thought they would do at the beginning of the year, where like they're playing teams well. The results might not be there, but they have some nice moments. They have a couple decent wins, like St. Joe over New Prairie, Marion over St. Joe, now New Prairie over Marion. So the Trinity has been completed. The circle has been completed, but that's the middle of the NIC this year, it feels like. So yeah, it's they're going to be dangerous, I think. Like, they're not going to be a pushover. St. Joe is not. They're not going to be a pushover this year. Not that they were like last year, but they kind of got mauled by Northwood in the sectional. Northwood obviously was really good. They went to state. Yeah. So, but like, St. Joe, I don't anticipate St. Joe getting blown out in a sectional game this year, personally.
And it's just so funny that you mentioned there, Marion. It's like these programs are just always so connected. I'm going to say
it's legitimately the Spider-Man meme right now. Like everyone's pointing to each. I'm trying to get my hands on the shoulder.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, like there you go.
Yeah, there we go.
And it's like the thing I want to say about St. Joe is basically the same exact thing I said about Marion. Tons of seniors, great coaching staff. They know what to do. It's so even though they've lost maybe some of these games are close, or now putting together some wins and a great defense, just that always plays well later in the season. Fun stat for you: if you look at their points for and their points against in conference,
St. Joe,
77-77. So it's just
That
they are the perfect even balanced team right now in the NIC.
You know who Thanos' favorite NIC football team is?
Exactly. Yeah, they just do exactly what they
Yeah.
need to do to win. And I mean, watching this team, I've seen a couple games for them, and like that defense, they just, when it comes down to it, they can just force some stops. They can get a blocked punt. They can get interception.
That's a fun stat, by the way. Good on you, man.
Yeah,
Look
do a
at
little
you with the stats. That's not even a stat I even knew. So
yeah, it's
now
one of those
I'm pulling
things.
up the NIC John Harrell.
There you go. Yeah, thank you, John Harrell. Thank you, John Harrell. That's what I have pulled up right now.
It
So
is 77-70.
Yep.
By the way, Marion is 3-2 in the conference. They've outscored them 144-88.
I saw that.
Crazy.
That's like the one difference. Is like
Yeah.
you can see the difference there. Is
Well, because St. Joe, St. Joe has a chance. They play Washington this week. They'll have a chance to, probably win comfortably, and then Penn. That would be pretty funny if they ended even, because like St. Joe and Penn, like it could be. I don't know. They could hang around with Penn.
You never know.
I don't know. We'll see. Yeah.
And then the last game we got to get to in the NIC from this past week, Adams, Washington. Adams.
Good for Adams.
49 points.
Yeah, good for them, man. The good was obviously, someone had to win this game, right? So it's just, it's tough. Obviously, tough season for both teams. I actually went out there and talked to both of them earlier last week about just like how do you keep positive and mentally, physically. By the way, Jaden Lineberry for Washington, 6 catches, 222 yards, 2 touchdowns, and an interception on defense. Like, that is a heck of an effort, and it just stinks that they didn't get the win for that. Like, that's an incredible performance. But, good for Adams, man. Like, they needed that. They had lost 14 in a row overall. I like Frank Karcheski. He's a nice guy, their head coach. There's Quincy 2020 or whatever.
2020?
2020. It's like, it's spelled Tootoo, but there's those commas.
Exactly.
Oh, no, sorry, apostrophes.
Yeah, the writer, you need to know it's apostrophes.
2020. 2020. Sorry, I'm just spitballing here. And but good for them, man. Yeah. What does it mean? I don't know. I don't think it means really much, but it's nice that, one of them had to get a win, and I'm happy for the kids at Adams, and hopefully the Washington kids are, still keep positive. They got a couple more weeks left here. So, yeah, it was, it's my thoughts.
And I just want to go back to this one.
Nothing else. Yeah.
I just want to go back to this one catch. You mentioned Lineberry. Take a look at this catch.
This is an insane catch.
And look at his hand, though, afterwards. Look at that. He has a bandage on his hand.
He's wearing a club. He's left-handed. He's left-handed. He's wearing a club on his left hand.
He's wearing a club on his left hand.
And he's 222 yards from 2 touchdowns.
And a catch in traffic. That was such a fun game. I mean, like you mentioned, both these teams towards the bottom of the standings right now, the NIC, but still just a fun back and forth. And for Adams especially, you mentioned.
City bragging rights,
Exactly.
City bragging rights,
still means, you can still tell, like,
it still means something to me.
Exactly. It still meant something to these two teams. So it was really nice to see that. And, nice to see Adams just put up some points. Come on, have a good time out there.
Adams and Riley this week. Riley has struggled on offense, and Adams
49 points.
Yeah. So look, I think coming into the season that was an easy, air quote, easy Riley win, but with how Riley has kind of played, and their offense hasn't really scored anything, and Adams is at least put up some. Like, they're gonna have confidence at a minimum. They'll have confidence. So. Yeah, don't sleep on that game this week. That could be a close game down to the wire.
Of course. Now let's go over to the NLC, the Northern Lakes Conference, and let's start with Plymouth and Northwood. How about that?
The current best story of the year. Plymouth Rockies. I'm actually going to, cheap plug, go down and talk to them Tuesday for a story this week. I think at the beginning of the year, we thought Plymouth will be better. They couldn't be any worse, really, than they were the last 4 years. And you looked at their schedule and you were like, okay, maybe 4-5, 3-6. Like, they'll win. They'll be better than 2-7 than they were last year. Like, okay, here we go. Then they're 5-2. Like, they're 5-2. Dude, if they beat Mishawaka this week, now it's a big if because Mishawaka's good and it's on the road. If they beat Mishawaka this week, they will be hosting Concord Week 9 for a chance to win a share of the conference championship.
Yes.
That is insane. Could you imagine telling yourself that Week 1 that this was going to happen? And their only conference loss is 13-7 to Northridge in Week 3 in a game that they probably feel like they should have won. And you look at Northridge, how they've played the rest of the year, it's like that's probably a winnable game. Like, if they played right now, Plymouth probably wins that game.
Yep.
Like, crazy that, like, Plymouth, of all the teams, like, this is just an awesome story. Adam Hanley, like, that was not an easy job, man. He came in there, and they were down bad. They went 0-10. He takes over. They go 0-10 again. Like, they had lost like 22 or 23 in a row. just tremendous buy-in to keep the kids motivated. And I talked about this with Washington and Adams coaches. I asked them last week because, Washington and Adams are kind of going through this similar period where they're 0-6 or whatever. They're both 0-6 last year. Like, do you look at Plymouth to, like, keep inspiration? Because, like, look what Plymouth is doing. Like, they beat Warsaw. They had lost 70-0 to Warsaw 2 years ago.
That was the stat I was just about to pull up. Yeah, it was like, what did they lose to Warsaw last 2 years ago?
They win at Warsaw, and it's a huge win. And, like, look, they probably had an emotional letdown a little bit against Northwood, but they still rallied enough to win. Like, they still beat Northwood, and, like all of a sudden, dude, the Rockies are, like, the biggest story in the area. I mean, I think they're the biggest story in the area, at least the last 2 weeks, because they beat Warsaw and Northwood back-to-back. You'd be hard-pressed. The last time, I don't know, I should have looked it up, what the last time they beat Northwood was, because even in the year, the last good year for Northwood, for Plymouth, 2019, they lost to Northwood that year. Like, week 9, they should have won the NLC outright, and they lost, and they shared it with Concord, who they had beaten earlier in the year. So, like, Plymouth has not beaten Northwood probably in more than a decade. Like, because I don't think they did in 2017, unless, in 2016, Northwood went undefeated until the state finals. Obviously, it hadn't happened in 20 or 1 or 2 or 3. So, like, it's been almost a decade at least since Plymouth had beaten Northwood in football. So, like, what a run. Like, this is so cool. Like, to me, these are the stories that, like, you live for, like, as what we do for our job. Like, this is so cool, man. Like, this is a lot of fun. This team is, they're Xander Ramirez is really fun at a quarterback. He's, like, they're exciting. Like, it's, you live for this because it's just the beauty of sports. There's teams that pop up and you don't expect them. You thought maybe, okay, like I said, like, maybe they'll be better by default. They're going to be better by default. They're good. Like, they're good. Like, I think they're in that sectional with Mishawaka and Northwood and Northridge and St. Joe. And now they're one of the teams, like, if they get the draw right, like, they could be playing early November for a sectional championship. Like, it's not out of the realm of possibility that Plymouth is playing November 9th for a sectional title.
And, I mean, the thing you mentioned, that's the biggest takeaway for me with this team is that, okay, they beat Warsaw, an emotional win. Losing 70-0 2 years ago, overtime, season-defining, program-defining win right there.
Yeah.
Then to come back the next week, it's going to be a letdown against Northwood. No doubt about it. It has to be. And they still find a way to win. That's what really good teams do. Because like you said, Northwood, a team they haven't beaten in we don't know how long, but years.
I'm gonna look this up.
Yeah, look this up.
Now I'm mad.
It's been years right now. So it's something the team they usually don't beat. A Northwood program that's very consistent. Just even in an off year for Northwood, let's say this year, they're still so well coached. They're still such a tough team to beat, and you're able to beat them on a letdown week. That's what really good, that's what great teams start to do. That's what teams that can make those runs into November, that's what they're able to do. And that, I mean, like you mentioned, looking at Plymouth right now, that Concord at Plymouth game, 2 weeks from now.
It could potentially, again, Plymouth has everything in front of them that they want to accomplish, right? Like, they have everything in front of them. Like, it's a fascinating game at Steel Stadium this week with Mishawaka and Plymouth. That is going to be a lot of fun, I think. And
16 sports game of the week right there.
There you go. We'll have coverage of that in the Tribune as well. So
100%.
Cheap plug.
Yeah, exactly. And then that Concord at Plymouth game, depending if Plymouth wins this week, that's probably going to have 16 sports game of the week again. They're going to be the best game in town for 2 weeks in a row. It just, you're right. It just shows how far this Plymouth program has really come, and that they're playing this meaningful football this late into the season.
So the last win, by the way, for Plymouth against Northwood was the 2015 sectional championship game. They played Plymouth had lost them in the regular season, but then they came back and beat them in the sectional final. Their last regular season win over Northwood was 2014.
So exactly 10 years ago.
So exactly 10 years ago was the last regular season win. They had lost 10 in a row overall to Northwood because they lost to them twice in 2018 when Northwood. They played Northwood back-to-back weeks, actually, week 9 and then the first round of the sectional. And they lost by a combined 96-15. That was a really good Northwood team.
Yeah, Northwoods, we know they've had some.
Bronson Yoder, that team was number 1 in 4A before they lost to Angola in the sectional final. No comment.
Yeah,
that was a tough one to be at. Really thought Northwood had a chance to make a run there, but hey, and that's the way the cookie crumbles, right? So
going around the rest of the NLC, another big result: Warsaw beating Mishawaka 21-13. Now both teams are 3-2 in the conference.
Yeah, it felt like Warsaw. I don't say they needed it more, but like after losing to Plymouth, they probably needed that more. Hey, we got to get ourselves back together. I'm not discouraged by Mishawaka in that loss. I mean, they're Warsaw is a team they won't have to play in the postseason. Usually you're not seeing another triple option team either. I know Mishawaka should know how to prepare for it better than anybody, but I wasn't discouraged by that result. It was a close game, back and forth, battle, to the end. And so Warsaw is solid. I think Warsaw, they're in that sectional with Concord. Pray that they're on the opposite sides because it would be really nice to see that as a sectional championship rematch. We'll see how that draw shakes out, obviously, Sunday night. But Warsaw's dangerous. They're a good team, still, even though they lost to Plymouth, and even though they have their other loss out of Warren Central, who's one of the best 6A teams in the state, and Concord on a last-second, touchdown. So, Warsaw is still really good, even though they're 4-3 overall. And Mishawaka is still good. They're 5-2, and being in 4A helps them a lot this year. They don't have to play those 5A schools, those bigger schools. Being in a sectional with a St. Joe even versus being in it with Concord is completely different for them. Schools like that. So I'm not discouraged. I wasn't discouraged, right? So I think if you put some truth serum, though, in Adam Hanley at Plymouth, he probably would have hoped Mishawaka would have won this week.
Yeah.
Last week, so that way they could maybe be a little more confident. Mishawaka bounce back game set up for, against Plymouth. But, yeah. I don't know. That's my thoughts. I'm not worried about either. I'm not worried about Mishawaka, even though they lost. They're still a good team. And they could. Look, in 4A has been the most wide open class the last 3 years for us. We've got Northridge in 21 and New Prairie in 22 and Northwood last year. So 4A to get to state is very gettable. It's there. It's not as hard as a 6A or a 5A or even some the smaller classes that have been a 1A with North Judson now sitting there, or a 2A, with Bishop Lours historically. So, yeah, I mean, if you're, Mishawaka can finish this regular season 7-2 potentially and still be sitting there just where we thought they would be going into sectionals.
Yeah, of course. That's kind of right by similar thoughts. Just both 3-2 in conference right now.
You should get your thoughts off before I get my thoughts off because I talk too long.
Yeah, so exactly. You just kind of say
I say a lot of things. My brain just starts rambling. So.
All right. So the next one.
You got any thoughts?
Yeah. Well, Concord.
Share your thoughts on Concord.
Concord beat Goshen 49-0. Concord really good. Not a close game for them though. They've had it feels like they've had close games every single week this season. So for them, a little bit of a breather where we're not talking about a dramatic Concord win. That's my thoughts.
The schedule gods were not kind to them at the beginning of the year. But they went 6-0 through that, and so they probably when they got done with Northwood, I asked kind of Craig Haler that after they got done with Northwood. It's how do you keep focused because you just played these 6 heavyweight fights, and now you're playing Goshen and Wawasee back-to-back weeks.
The two teams at the bottom of the conference.
Right, and he's we just got to worry about improving our game. We can't, but I mean, again, the truth serum thing, if you put something in Craig, he probably would have been whew, thank God. We need to get healthy. We need to, don't have to play our starters in the second half, or even the second quarter in some of these games. Wawasee will be a similar type result, I'm expecting. At the beginning of the year, it was Plymouth week 9, 2 will be an easy one for them. Obviously, that is not shaping up to be the case. Even if Plymouth loses to Mishawaka, that's going to be a tougher game for Concord.
That's still going to be a game to decide the conference.
There was a lot of thought at the beginning of the beginning of the year. It's Concord basically gets 4 bye weeks before the sectional because they get Goshen, Wawasee, Plymouth to end, and then they actually get a literal bye week because 6A and 5A get bye weeks. But no, I mean Plymouth will be a game, but they should take care of Wawasee this week and be 8-0, undefeated in the conference going into the Plymouth game. And then, if Plymouth loses this week, they've won the conference championship. It's outright, and they can
kind of do
what they want with their starters, I guess. They can probably, probably play them a little bit, but they could, in theory, rest.
Yeah, you already have the conference championship wrapped up. Maybe
if Plymouth though beats Mishawaka, that is all of a sudden
that game Game of the week.
It means something.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And the only other result was Northridge beating Wawasee 44-15. Don't spend too much time on that.
Yeah. Get right game. Right game for Northridge. Yeah. I mean, and they play Goshen this week. So Northridge again, they're kind of just humming.
Exactly.
They're there.
Doing their thing.
They're lurking.
And then let's go to the INS now, where the big result of this past Friday night, Knox beating Jimtown 41-28. So
It wasn't
Knox,
really that close, though.
Yeah, it was.
Jimtown put a couple late scores up.
Yeah.
You got any thoughts?
Well, I mean, I think, this kind of puts just Knox, 4-0 in conference right now. Jimtown in second place with 3-1 with that one loss. It kind of Knox is going to win that conference, it looks like.
Yeah, and I think this is the team that we thought Knox was going to be at the beginning of the year. Like, this is like, they got kind of handled by North Judson week 1, and then they lost to Culver Academy in a crazy game in week 3, and they were 1-2, and you were like,
what's going on
Knox
here?
Okay. This is the Knox we thought could win a 3A state championship. Miles McLaughlin, if your pet's been injured or whatever, right? If your defense is being injured by Miles McLaughlin, you might, be entitled or something. I don't know. I'm trying to make a McLaughlin joke, whatever. They're good. Like, Knox is good. And this was Jimtown was a surprise. They were 4-2 going into last week, and it was like, okay, like, they're playing much better. I'm not, like, discouraged completely by Jimtown yet. The discouraging thing is the fact that, like, they're in the same sectional with Knox.
Yeah.
And, you have to beat these guys to get to where you want to go. So, like, that is kind of a bummer. But, like, look, this was the first time Jimtown has really been in a bigger type of game like this in a few years. Like, they weren't really in the mix for the conference last year. They were always in the mix for the NIC North-South division was what they were in. North-South, East-West, whatever. They were in North-South, the smaller schools. So they were in the mix for that a lot in, the late 2010s. But, this was the first time they really were in this spot with this group and with this head coach. So, is it a tough loss? Yes. It's it's only discouraging because of the same sectional setup. Like, that's where it kind of like, it's like, dang, like, okay, well, you at least know what you have, like, what the top team in the conference looks like. You played them. This is what we have to do to beat them. Like, now we know what we have to do to beat them. So, yeah.
Of course, yeah. And so a couple other results. Anything else before we move on to previewing this next week? Any other results from this past week and that really stuck out to you? Nothing
really stuck out too much other than those. In Michigan, Niles keeps rolling. And,
and speaking of a team that I want to see their points against, so they see what they matter.
300 to 25. They lost to St. Joseph, Michigan, 30-0, whatever, week 1. But since then, they have steamrolled everybody, which is what they were doing last year too. So, Paw Paw beating Edwardsburg was a big game in that conference, the Wolverine Conference. So now currently it's Niles and Paw Paw, the undefeated teams. They play week 9. In their week 9, which is the first week of sectionals in Indiana. So
the little bit, you always got to remember there's a difference. Yeah.
Yeah. So, So other than that, no, nothing really caught my eye as far as from the area is concerned. So.
Yeah, I just want to shout out St. Joseph because we do cover that's still in our coverage area. The Bears 6-0. They're just. I feel like every week I'm looking at these results and they're just consistently rolling.
The gap between the best and the worst in Michigan, it feels like, is much wider than Indiana. Like, there are some obviously weaker teams in our side of South Bend South Bend area, South Bend area, some of the South Bend teams specifically, but like you don't tend to see like consistently a lot of 60 to like the Michigan scores from the teams that we cover, like 42-7. 21-7 was Paw Paw Edwardsburg, 63-0 Dowagiac over Brandywine, right? Berrien Springs 31-6 over Buchanan, Cassopolis 27-24 over Comstock. So that was a close game, but like, generally a lot of these bigger, like Edwardsburg was winning 50-0 every week, and Niles wins 50-0 every week, and if Paw Paw isn't playing Niles or Edwardsburg, it's 50-0. Like, it just feels like there is a bigger gap between. There's not like a middle. Like, you're either good or you're bad. Like, it's weird. It's kind of a weird, you're either good or you're bad in Michigan, it feels like. There's not a lot of, like, average teams.
Yeah, exactly. So, it feels like there's no middle right there.
Yeah.
All right, so now let's move towards this Friday night, a little preview action.
We talked a lot about it already. It's my bad. I forgot.
It's
our policy here to wait till we,
You don't have to wait,
You get the thoughts rolling, though, man. You start thinking about this week.
Exactly. So we kind of already touched on some of the important games, but the one we keep talking about is that Plymouth at Mishawaka game. We just keep on touching on.
Yeah, I think, so the Warsaw game was big 2 weeks ago, obviously. I want to preface that take before I make this take. But this might be the biggest game for Plymouth in like 5 years. Like, yes, the Warsaw game was big, but going into it, there was a lot of consensus that Warsaw is probably going to win this game by 2 scores or whatever. Like, as far as build up to where Plymouth actually has a chance to win the game, or people really think they could win the game, it's probably been since they played Concord 5 years ago in the regular season when both teams were in the top 10 of their respective classes. Like Plymouth was like top 5 in 4A, Concord was a top 5 in 5A team, and it was like huge. I actually covered that game. I was there. Plymouth was rolling. They won that game. Plymouth won that game. Then they lost to Northwood a couple weeks later to result in the share of the conference championship with Concord. But I think as far as pre-game expectations and hype for Plymouth, this is the biggest one since then. Like, they have not played a game with this much on the line. The conference is on the line.
Yep.
For them still, and they get a chance to win and host Concord Week 9 for a conference championship. Like, managing all of that, like, it's going to be big. Like, it's going to be emotional. Like, Mishawaka has been here, done that. They really can't win the conference.
Yeah,
they
they're
have
kind of
two
out
losses.
of it. Yeah.
Like, they're just playing to get better for, mid-October and early November. Like, that's what they're playing for right now. Plymouth is still playing for a conference championship as of this moment. So, like, Plymouth has to kind of manage that emotions. And, like, again, they, maybe they kind of got it out of their system with Northwood. It was like, okay, like, we could take some blueprint, what we do last week to handle emotions, coming off a big win. How do we handle emotions now going into a big game? Like, so that is the game of the week, I think, in the area. It's super fun. Like, it just feels like it's going to be a fun game. I hope it's a good game. Like, worst case scenario, if it's a bad game, like, that'd be kind of a bummer. But, like, I don't think I'd be saying these words before the season, but it's a potential sectional championship preview. Like, that is what this is. Like, it's crazy. And then the NIC games, this slate this week is three of the games. St. Joseph is probably a big favorite over Washington. But other than that, Adams-Riley, we talked about it, is maybe a toss-up game. Could Adams win 2 in a row? Like, it's not out of the possibility. New Prairie Penn is fascinating to me because Penn, we kind of talked about it after they lost to Mishawaka. It's almost a gut check type moment. This is a gut check type moment for Penn because New Prairie is playing well. They have put up 49 and 42 the last 2 weeks. They are really good. Like, they're playing better. New Prairie is doing what New Prairie's done the last couple of years. They peak
at the right time.
They figure it out in early October, and here they are. Like, once again, the Cougars are just sitting there. Like, don't forget about us. We've won 3 sectionals in a row. Like, and we could win a 4th right now. Like, this is a big game for Penn. This is a big game for Penn. Like, they have to. I'm not saying it's a must win, because you're in the playoffs no matter what. But it feels like for the vibes a must win.
It really does.
It really does. They need this, and like New Prairie has played them hard pretty much every year that they've really last 5 years that they've been playing more often. They got them in 2019 out there, and I think they beat them again in 2021, I believe. And last year I covered that New Prairie Penn game. I think New Prairie had 10 yards of offense. Penn, New Prairie, they got room to improve, at least offensively. That game, though, it feels like a toss-up. I can't get over, like, Penn's offense just not playing well against some of these better teams on their schedule. Like, they have to figure that out. And then Elkhart Marion. Like, Marion,
that's the one that I was about to say. That's the game I'm kind of circling right now. It just feels like we talked about it a little bit, but I mean, Elkhart, they just beat Penn. It feels, super emotional.
Second time they've beaten Penn in the last 40 years, and an Elkhart school has beaten Penn in the last 40 years, and only the 4th time ever. So, like, Elkhart, whether it was Memorial or Central or the merged Elkhart, they don't beat Penn.
That's a huge deal.
7-3, by the way. Shout out Anthony Anderson for this. 7-3 is the largest margin of victory for Elkhart over a Penn school. An Elkhart school over a Penn school. 4 points. It's the largest margin of victory. So when they beat them, they barely beat them. They blew them out, air quote, compared to what they've done in the past. 7-3.
Over a field goal.
Seriously, like, legitimately, so it's a huge win. Not just for the current team, but like there's like all the alums are probably like commenting like, oh my God, like you guys beat them. You guys beat the boogeyman. Like, thank you so much. This is a big pat on the back week over there at Elkhart. Like, you guys did it. Like,
and then on Penn's homecoming too. I mean,
right.
It was just
the fireworks going off afterwards. It was a great touch.
Incredible scene there for Elkhart.
Yeah.
And now they're thinking they're in the driver's seat of the conference. They're 5-0 in the NIC. They're thinking, okay, we basically got this wrapped up. But here comes Marion and a team that
plays everyone well. They've played everybody well.
And the thing that, when you start to think, okay, can Marion maybe get a game against Elkhart? It's like, okay, well, Elkhart, we've talked about their offense struggling. Marion last game hit a couple big plays with Deuce Owens down the field. They start throwing the ball around a little bit. 1 or 2 big touchdowns. Can Elkhart come back from that? Elkhart emotionally maybe got a little too high, let down game. Do the penalties start to come back against a veteran team like Marion who knows how to capitalize off that? All of a sudden, this is a close game late, and Elkhart makes 1 or 2 wrong penalties. Marion's right in it. So I think this is a game where I'm kind of circling where it's going to show me a lot. I think about Elkhart and how they can kind of handle success.
It feels like Elkhart needs to score first.
Yes,
Like let's get the first points on the board. Let's go up 3-0 even or 7-0. Like if Marion goes up 7-0, it's all right. Like it's a little tense, maybe. Yeah. So I mean, look, if I had to pick, I'm still gonna lean Elkhart.
Yeah.
But like Marion is not. They're not a 3-4 team. Like they
not.
are. You are what your record is. But I mean, they've lost. Their losses are to really good 4A, 5A, 6A teams. Like they're not a pushover by any stretch.
And this feels like the game that they lost those types of games. Like, okay, we learned what we needed to do, and it was like against those really tough opponents, and they go into Elkhart and they could pull off an upset. That's the game I'm just like looking at. Like, I really think that we could be come here next Monday saying, man, what about that Marion win over Elkhart? That came out of nowhere.
It's the unofficial trap game of the week.
Yes,
it's a trap game. Like
it's the Plymouth against Northwood of this week. Yes, that's what it feels like.
Yes.
It feels exactly like that.
Very big emotional win last week. Playing a team that you probably should be like.
Oh yeah.
Can you beat them though? Can you get over that emotional hump and beat them? So yeah, it's gonna be fun.
All right.
So I don't think any of and then Niles Edwardsburg. I want to give a shout out. That's probably where I'm gonna be at on Friday night. That's a big Southwest Michigan game. Niles needs a win to stay keep pace with Paw Paw in the Wolverine Conference up there. Edwardsburg. This is the first time Edwardsburg, not the first time. Edwardsburg has been really good for years. They had an off year last year, but they were playing better this year. This feels like a big game for Edwardsburg just for, if they want to get into playoffs, because you have to qualify up there in Indiana, in Michigan. You have to qualify for the playoffs. So Edwardsburg probably needs this for the playoff points, and they get in. They could still get in, obviously, the finishing 6-3, but it'd be really nice to beat Niles and get those pretty much not guarantee it, but all but guarantee a playoff spot. Niles needs it for the conference championship and playoff points too. Obviously, you're on the line for them, but excuse me, yeah, that's an intriguing game, and they both run triple options. So hopefully, keep clock running. The only time the clock will stop is if they score touchdowns. And given how much they've been scoring this year, it might be
it might actually
other than this past week for Edwardsburg, they have put up 40 in every game pretty much they've played. So
Niles puts up points too.
First one to 70. I'm kidding. It won't be that bad, but it feels like there's gonna be some points. Can't be as crazy as that Bishop Tard, or was it Bishop Tard? One of the schools in Indy scored 83 this week. Ooh. It was 83-65 was the final score.
Wow.
I think it was not Chittard. It was one of those schools down there.
A 4-hour game?
It was a private school. Yeah, it had to have gone 4 hours. It was one of the private schools down in Indianapolis. Put up 83-65. So
yeah, that sounds like. I'm glad I was not covering that. That's cool.
Did you bet the over?
It would have been great to get highlights of that game. I will say that. It would have been really easy to get some highlights, but man.
It would have been the first time you would have had to have omitted touchdowns from a highlight.
I would have been saying, which touchdown's better? Usually that's not, it's little inside baseball. We don't have to do that usually. We show the touchdowns, but that's one where I have to be like, maybe not this touchdown.
I don't know, Bob. Yeah.
Only, 2-minute highlights. But
and again, this is I hit it earlier, but this is kind of like most of the conference races are decided. Obviously, there's technically some ties come into play here, lingering drama if some craziness happens. But a lot of it now is like, all right, the sectional comes out, the draw comes out Sunday. We got our eyes more so focused on what's coming in 2 weeks for classes 4A through 1A, and then in 3 weeks for 5A and 6A as well. So a lot of the takeaways and preparation isn't just for the rest of the last 2 weeks of regular season, but what's coming. So.
Of course, yeah. Well, and we'll be breaking that down next week. But before we go, Austin, got to ask. You cover all high school sports around here.
Yes.
Anything? What are some other storylines around the area we should be taking a look at?
It is soccer sectional week, so congratulations to all who celebrate or whatever. Boys soccer sectionals are usually like Monday, Wednesday, Saturday. Girls are Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday. There are some overlap days there with both of them, but we got a lot of sectional action coming up. SouthBendTribune.com has got all of your soccer scorers coverage. I'll be out at Penn on Monday, St. Joe on Tuesday. Probably St. Joe for the girls on Saturday. If chalk holds, if the bracket holds, it'll be number 1 St. Joe versus number 3 Mishawaka Marion.
Oh,
they moved Marion down from 2 to 3 this week. I'm so mad. I was like 1 versus 2, 1 versus 2.
Yeah, 1 versus 2. Come on.
I've been saying it all week. 1 versus 2, 1 versus 2, and that's 1 versus 3.
That's still pretty cool though.
It would still be a great game, St. Joe and Marion, if that it holds. But hey, St. Joe girls on Tuesday have played Jimtown. Jimtown is 13-2-1 on this season. Like they are not going to be a pushover. Do not sleep on the Jimmy's girls soccer program, but St. Joe is, one of those programs that's always kind of in the mix, and they're really good. So it's hard not to fantasize about 1 versus 3 on Saturday, but you got to get past Jimtown first.
Got to take care of business first.
Yeah, and so the boys' side, it feels wide open. The one at Penn is wide open. You got Penn ranked in the top 20. Goshen, they're playing in the top 20. Elkhart is a really scrappy team. Concord is ranked in the top 20 there. Northridge is 9-4-3 or whatever. You have 5 of the 6 teams there that have really good records, and it's going to be just incredible soccer. The semifinals on Wednesday, it's either going to be Goshen and or Penn, whoever wins tonight, and then versus Elkhart, and that's a good matchup, and then Northridge Concord. Like if you're looking for 4 hours of entertainment of soccer, like that's going to be 2 really good games, 2 emotional rivalry type games potentially on Wednesday night over at Penn. So go check that out if you're interested. That's the big thing going on this week. We have some volleyball. Last week of the regular season for volleyball coming up. Penn's kind of clinched the NIC. Warsaw's kind of clinched the NLC. Penn Mishawaka, Tuesday night, big matchup. Penn is 19-5. Mishawaka is 26-2. And the blind draw came out on Sunday night, and they will play each other in the first round.
Fantastic.
Next Thursday. So you see Penn versus Mishawaka twice in the next 9 days. So how this goes Tuesday could be interesting in regards to how it sets up what happens next Thursday.
Yeah, it's a big confidence booster to whoever wins, I think.
Yeah, so and then boys tennis, man. We got boys tennis regionals. St. Joe is a favorite over at LaPorte. Penn is a favorite down at Northwood, although not as big of a favorite maybe as St. Joe. Like Penn is in a tougher regional with Wawasee, amazingly. It's like really good. They're undefeated. Fairfield is playing well. So Penn's got some competition down there in Northwood, but St. Joe has a really nice chance to maybe go to state. Their sectional or the regional isn't as strong, and their semi-state matchup won't be against one of the powers, of the state. Where Penn, if they get through, they probably have to play Homestead, who's a really good program. So St. Joe, we could be sitting here next Monday, and they're one of the final 8 boys tennis teams in the state going down there for the state quarterfinals next Friday. So just don't be surprised by that. And then, we have cross country is pretty much on a bye week. They used to run sectional, regional, semi-state, state. They got rid of the semi-state round, and so the sectional is not until next Saturday, the 19th.
Okay.
So they're off. There are some smaller races, but
rest the legs.
If only if someone somehow breaks a state record will there be a cross country athlete in the athlete of the week poll this week.
There you go.
Disclaimer. And girls golf just finished up. St. Joe was 10th, Northridge was 12th. Northwood had the best performer. Sophie Richmond was tied for 14th. St. Joe has their entire team coming back next year, so you got to feel confident in that. Northridge graduates 2 seniors, but their top player was a junior this year. The Northwood girl is a junior this year, too. So a lot of that top-end talent will be back next year. There's a lot going on. This is the busiest month of the year. Easily the busiest month of the high school sports season by far in the IHSA. You have all of the postseason pretty much going on. Obviously, some of it carries over into November. Football playoffs are getting ready to start up here in a couple of weeks. There are a lot of Saturdays, like the 26th will be Don't Call Me Day. And the 19th actually might be the worst. The 19th is probably the worst. You have, if potentially the boys tennis state finals are going on that day, and we might still, who knows, maybe St. Joe gets another nice draw and they're in the state semifinals. You have volleyball sectional semifinals in the morning, championship games at night, cross-country sectionals during the early morning/afternoon, boys and girls soccer regionals in the early afternoon and evening. So I think that's it. This is big 4, but you have, state, sectional, regional, all going on all at the same time. And then the following, November 2nd, you have the state soccer finals, you have the volleyball, semi-state, you have cross-country state, you have...
At that time of year.
And the football sectionals are the night before, so, you have football sectional games on Friday night that are going on at the same time as the soccer state finals. They put 2 games on the Friday night and then 4 on the Saturday.
Wow. Yeah.
So
it's a lot going on.
Yeah. Your brain starts hurting when you're trying to like look at the schedule and like, okay, what can we cover? Where should we go? And you can't really fully plan a lot of it because you don't know who's going to win or not.
Yeah, you got to figure it out. It's like on the fly.
You're just kind of hedging like, okay, well, St. Joe and Marion are top 3 in girls soccer.
So they'll probably
whoever wins one of that, it's probably going to semi-state. But what if they don't?
Yeah,
like,
you never know.
Now we
It's
can go to
sports.
volleyball and maybe we'll go cross country. Like Liam Bauschke from Mishawaka has a chance to win state. Max Malloy too from Elkhart and Aaron Richter, like they're in the mix to win state cross country. And you got St. Joe boys tennis now. Like don't forget about us, by the way. Like we could potentially go to state here. Like with this, they're good and their draw sets up really nicely for them. So
it's that time. Take a deep breath. Take a deep breath. Also, it's that time of year.
If you need me, call me on like November 12th. Like
there you go.
Don't need me for the next 35 days because I won't be sleeping much and I'll just be locked in on all this high school sports action.
That's exactly what we want to hear. Well, that wraps.
It's busy. It's too busy, man. I didn't assist it.
There you go. Well, that might not be in the budget right now.
No, nothing's in the budget. Sadly.
Well, that wraps up this episode of 16 Sports Extra, the podcast with the South Bend Tribune. You can find all of Austin's work in the South Bend Tribune on southbendtribune.com, on Twitter.
At Austin R. Huff.
There you go. All my work on Twitter, Jackson Neill TV, plus X exactly, and then also on WNDU, the TV station, and our website. So tons of content coming. Really fun time of year. Thank you so much for watching another week.